And hey, folks, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Michel Bryant. We've been in California for the last case, the Kellen Winslow case. Let's stay in California. In fact, we've been out in California since January 7th for the California versus Charles Chase Merritt case. And we've been on verdict watch for about 20 hours. Well, guess what? We're not on verdict watch anymore. Now we're on verdict wait, because the court has decided that we're not going to give you the verdict until Monday. The jury's got a verdict. We're not going to play it out for you until Monday. This, of course, the case in which that lovely family there was killed by apparently the defendant, if you believe the prosecution. This man right there, he was a business partner with the older family member there, his wife Summer, the two 3- and 4-year-old kids. Joseph McStay apparently had some financial dealings that this defendant was not happy about. That's the prosecution's argument. We've tossed it back and forth as to whether or not there was enough for a jury to convict. Well, now we know there is a verdict, and we'll find out Monday what that is all about. I'm not sure we've seen a case where the closing arguments were as important as in this case, where it has played out over such a long period of time. Now the prosecution and the defense have to kind of pull it all together and make sense for this jury. And again, we do have a verdict in the case. It won't be read till Monday. Joining me in the studio, Angela Dorn, criminal defense attorney and civil rights attorney. Thank you for being here. You've been following this extravaganza. The biggest issue that jumped out to most viewers was, hey, the prosecution says the killings took place in the house, and then there was this crazy lack of forensic evidence to that fact. So now, as we get to closings, they kind of soften that position, and the prosecution is saying, well, we weren't, we didn't say it was there. We said they happened, and that could have been where it happened. What do you think about that kind of, it's not midstream, it's end-of-stream change?
Well, Michael, I think the end-of-stream change really signifies that the prosecution is not so certain that they made their point with respect to where the killings took place. And it's no wonder, because this is a complex and difficult case to really prove. The prosecution is relying on the idea that the totality of the circumstances, when you look at all of the evidence, all of the circumstantial evidence, that there's enough to find a guilty verdict. It's not so clear here.
It's amazing to me. The other thing they changed tacks on a little bit was, one of the things I thought was their strongest evidence was the evidence that suggested the cell phone of Charles Merritt pinged in the area where the bodies were ultimately found, at or about the time that they might have been buried. Well, then they came off of that as well to suggest that it was at a different time that his phone pinged there. Well, now what? I know his mom, I think, was living there. So now what's the jury supposed to do with that? First, it helps them get to the conviction. Now it muddies the water even more.
It's a difficult situation for the prosecution, because they emphasize the importance of that evidence, and then suddenly that evidence isn't there for them anymore. And the defense is going to nail them on that point, did nail them on that point. So they have to backpedal a little bit, but then talk about how that was interesting but not as important as we said it was before. Usually juries are not persuaded by that. But
that's not a very strong position. Okay, let's listen to more of the closing argument from the prosecution in this case. So the defense making every effort they can to convince this jury that they got the wrong guy here. It ain't Charles Chase Merritt. That's a case that's going on since February 2010, when the murders took place, and now the jury has a verdict for us. We're going to sit on it for the weekend. We'll have it Monday. Here in the studio with me, Angela Dorn, criminal defense advisor and civil rights attorney. I think there are a lot of problems with this case as we've seen it unfold slowly. What do you think the biggest problem is?
Well, I think the biggest problem has been pointed out, Michael, by the defense attorney, a lack of facts that are connecting the defendant to the crime. That's the biggest problem for the prosecution here. What
do you think about Kavanaugh, Dan Kavanaugh, the missing defendant who is never charged, and there's some argument that, hey, he was in Hawaii, he couldn't possibly have done this, and that was kind of debunked by the defense because they shot holes in what the prosecution says was proof he was in Hawaii. So how effective is the fact that he's not there in keeping the defense getting their guy off on this thing?
I think it's very effective. So we always talk about, in a criminal trial, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And the lack of Kavanaugh not being there, who's a critical element of this whole story, could be enough to convince jurors that that the prosecution doesn't have the goods.
Yeah, and the theory I've had, and I can only share this one more time because the trial's almost over, was that Kavanaugh and Merritt were in cahoots, and they did this together. When Kavanaugh had his alibi that worked, he got off the hook, and then the evidence against Merritt is so weak, he's going to get off the hook. What do you think?
I think it's a pretty good theory. And I think this is one of those cases where you feel like the defendant is involved in some way. There's enough that's there where you're like, this person seems like they're involved. But somehow the prosecution has not quite knit things together. And I think your Kavanaugh theory is as good as any.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that. Got one plus from the judge, Judge Dorn. Okay, thank you for coming in, Angela. I appreciate it. You're going to stick around and join Aaron Keller for the Daily Debrief. Very good. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And that's going to do it for me, Michael Bryant. Go out and have yourself a great weekend. Don't forget, we'll have the Merritt verdict on Monday. So have fun. We'll see you on Monday for that verdict and more right here on the Law and Crime Network. Bye-bye.